Rugby Sevens. Good to have you with us in the Premier Suite. Thank you very much indeed for you being here this afternoon. And just a quick reminder that this is your home from home. We give back to you. So a couple of drinks, a little bit of shade, and an ability to take your to take a seat, take a bit of a rest throughout proceedings today. So use this as your home from home throughout the day down here at the Sevens. Also, not one but two opportunities to hear from two HSBC rugby ambassadors. If you're enjoying yourself down here, get involved with the hashtag. It is hashtag HSBC7s. And of course, use all the latest on Twitter at HSBC_sport. We are live on Facebook at the moment. There they are, the Facebook team up there, taking questions on Facebook Live, and of course taking questions from the floor for these two individuals. Eyes to the screen, please. Okie dokie, Dubai. Time to welcome up onto the stage the former captain of Leinster, Ireland, and the British and Irish Lions, in HSBC rugby ambassador, who gets to choose the stool first. Please welcome Mr. Brian O'Driscoll. Which one's he going to take? Okay, he's taken the middle seat. Let's also get up our other HSBC rugby ambassador, the only men's rugby sevens coach with continental, world and Olympic titles under his belt. Please welcome Mr. Ben Ryan.
Right in the sunshine. Yeah. Right in the sunshine.
Right in the sunshine. Not as bad today as it was yesterday. A bit of cloud cover. Enough of the weather. Let's crack on with the rugby. You've just been watching that game. In fact, you were commentating on it. How have England progressed in this tournament? Are you impressed with what you're seeing at the moment?
Today, I thought last night they were brilliant against Scotland, and then I couldn't call today's game against Australia. The difference at the moment is the outstanding Dan Norton. And yesterday, in the game against Scotland, they did the dance cam at half-time, and I saw his dad, Aubrey, on there, pretty smashed, dancing. And that's always a good sign. If you see Dan Norton's dad smashed at the ground, he's in a good place and he's happy, and he's going to have a great tournament.
What, his dad or Dan?
Well, both are.
We were just talking about Dan Norton, Brian and I. I mean, he seems to be evergreen, doesn't he, Brian? He's been going forever.
He really has. He's more often than not the difference between whether England progress in those clutch matches or not. But it was really interesting. I've spent a small bit of time with the England team, and they've all become unrecognisable because of shaved heads. So you're looking at the names on their jerseys more than faces. But just that try at the end, I suppose for any kids that are listening and watching why that try was scored right at the death by Will Glover. So he was the one that threw the offload. And from a defensive perspective, if you're taken out of the game, you've got to take the attacking player out of the game. Will Glover wasn't taken out of the game. He threw an offload, and then he was the one that was able to receive that next pass, and that was the difference between winning and losing. So a lesson to be learned. All good coaches will say, if you defensively are going to be gone from it, take the attacking player with you. Put him to deck. Make sure he can't be support player.
If you are on your social media accounts, can I encourage you, please, to get to the HSBC_sport channel? Reason being, there's a great video up there at the moment. It's entitled The Death Zone, which sounds a little bit sinister, but that man over there was involved in it. Brian, give us an insight into The Death Zone.
Yeah, the idea behind this, I agreed to it a little under the influence a number of months ago, thinking that the day would never come, and then it did arrive, and I did minimal training. But basically, the Death Zone is England Sevens' most difficult training session. And if you can see how fit these guys are. So their most difficult training session, an ex-professional that has done hardly any running for 2.5 years is not best equipped to deal with the rigors of it. Anyway, I threw myself in. The idea is the death zone is the difficult spot when you're trying to climb Everest, where humans can't breathe as easily, and then they have to still go at the extra mile to try and get to the summit. So it's trying to get into that really uncomfortable place and then exertion upon exertion upon exertion. So I just tried to hang in there to actually, in the warm-up, I was sucking absolutely huge ones in the warm-up. I was like, we haven't even started the death zone yet. But these guys are freak athletes. They are incredible how they're able to maintain their huge skill levels through enormous fatigue in hot temperatures. So what you're seeing here is people at their pinnacle.
A ginger in the desert without factor 110 sunblock, that is also the death zone for us. So we have to be very careful. I have to get a hat shortly.
We will get a hat sorted for you now, don't worry about that. Who better to ask, though, a man who's coached some of the fittest out there, whether it be for England Sevens or Fiji Sevens as well. We've seen the game evolve a lot in the times. Has the player fitness evolved as well with that?
Yeah, I mean, they're at, 5, 6 years ago, there were no real professional Sevens players. I think the first teams were around 2010. Thank you. Around 2010. So
I don't think your knee is going to be the issue.
You work your way up, slowly but surely. Small wins, small victories. They've got bigger and faster now, so these guys are 100 kilograms plus, some of them, and yet they can do ridiculous fitness tests, and their speed endurance is amazing. Dan Norton's a more leaner type of athlete, but his fitness tests, he always would break the England fitness tests. He was fitter than anybody in the current England EPS squad at 15s level, because he's got that speed repeat, and we want to see that. We want them to do a 90-metre run and then 30 seconds later repeat it all again. That's the joy of Sevens, isn't it? It's looking at a game that you admire and think, I can't do that anymore, and we can't do it, but we enjoy watching it.
Dan Norton makes it look so easy, but he has this strange thing where he smiles when he's absolutely dying. So it looks as though he's just taking the piss out of the opposition. He scored that length of the field try, kick and chase we've seen so many times. And then he's smiling at the end of it, but he's actually trying to get the last breath before he dies. So it's remarkable. It must be pretty deflating for the opposition when you see that.
Yeah, I would talk about Dan Norton, because when I used to coach him, I knew him from the age of 15. We were the first team to use GPS. If you watch the boys, most teams now have little lumps in the back of their shoulders that are GPS, that measure everything. And so we were the first team that used them in 2009. I found them in a cupboard at Twickenham. The first team under Sir Clive had used them, didn't like them, chucked them away. I found them and used them. And Dan Norton, we talked about this yesterday, had the best statistics for over a season in training. And it was only later on that I found out that he was driving around in the car park with it. So he's not only a fit player, he's bright as well, knows how to play their coaches.
Talk to me about coaching style, if you can, because coaching, as we've seen, has evolved for the Sevens game as well. Different coaches approach it in different ways as well. What's been the way that you've got the most out of players? Is it to be harsh but fair, to be understanding, to be a man manager?
Yeah, I was probably a little bit softer with the England boys and a bit tougher with the Fijians, create black and white, and I'd certainly do that in the future. My philosophy is to make myself redundant. So ultimately go to a big game and be able to go in the stand, have a beer, because the team know what they're doing and they don't need me. Coaches should be in the dark. Players should be in the light, and if that's your philosophy, then all your processes and your training and the way that you work your team is about getting the best out of individuals and leaving it down to them. Rugby's a simple game. Coaches often stuff it up by getting too involved, and less is sometimes more. So the occasional point, some smiling, slap on the back, and off they go. And it seems to work for me. It's all about the players and getting the very best out of every individual.
I think this coach in particular should definitely be in the dark, for everyone.
Brian, in terms of you and your playing career, which coach do you think brought the best out of you during your playing days?
I was very lucky that in the winter of my career, I probably came across my favourite coach and the best coach that I've come under. He's still the current Irish coach, Kiwi Joe Schmidt. He is really exceptional, and I was lucky that I had him for 4 seasons with my club before one final season internationally, and it's just the level of detail that he's able to bring, an understanding that every individual has to know their role so well, otherwise they're just not going to get game time. And there's a school teacher in him. Everyone's a bit afraid of him. But I think it's healthy in that it creates an environment where no one feels settled. The only exception to the rule probably is someone like Johnny Sexton, who's 10 for Ireland, and he's the heartbeat of everything that Ireland do. But sometimes you'll get a tip sheet, of what's going to happen at the weekend or what he's doing, and it'll be signed off JS at the end of the page. People don't really know if that's Johnny Sexton or Joe Schmidt. It's like it could be either of them because he's the son that he never had. The two of them are very, very tight.
Let's get some questions from the floor. Opportunity for you to ask. Mr. Ford.
Thank you, Tom. 2 questions, if you don't mind, Tom. Very quick one. Brian, yesterday you said that you think England would win. Do you still think that's the case?
Listen, looking at the Blitzbock, they look pretty impressive too. I think for me, what I like about them is their unwillingness to give up on anything. Their defence has been the hallmark of how they won the series last year, and they've been, never say die attitude. And when you have that attitude, you build your attack game on it with some of the calibre of players that they have, they're going to be a massive threat to anyone they come across. But England will take huge confidence in that game, and they'll know that on their day that they can beat anyone. So I think it's really open still. I think Fiji love it here. They win a lot of Dubai events. They love first up. So I think it's a toss of a coin amongst any of the 4 semi-finalists.
Thanks. And a quick question for both of you. With Las Vegas a part of the tour and the US not performing so well here, when do you think the USA are going to be a force in sevens particularly?
They are. They came 5th in the series last year. They've got a full-time group that trained down in just outside San Diego, and they've had a really poor day one yesterday, which I didn't see coming because they look like they've got a good side together. And the good thing about the World Series, we talked about this yesterday, if you don't have a bad game and then have to wait ages to play again, they'll play again next week in Cape Town. It will probably be a different USA side. They're very good. They were unlucky they had Perry Baker, World Player of the Year, knocked out first minute of first game. So I think they'll be close to some silverware this season, and that's great that we're seeing lots of teams in the top table. Although Vegas is a weird place to play a rugby tournament on many levels.
That's another level of death zone that you get involved in. Yeah, try do a weekend there. Don't worry about playing rugby in it.
We've got a question at the back here. Yes, fellas?
Hi, I've got a question for Brian. You mentioned that Joe Schmidt was the best coach who ever coached you. Who was the worst coach?
Oh, goodness. Worst coach. Facebook Live, eh? My dad, yeah. I'll go safe. Dad, I still love you, but you were terrible. Just too vocal on the touchline. Actually, my dad, when I started out as a 12-year-old, he, this in Blackrock College, which is a renowned rugby school in Ireland, the teachers asked, do any parents want to help out? And I was like, yeah, do you know what? I think my dad's an ex-Ireland international. He played twice for Ireland in uncapped games against Argentina. I said, yeah, he'll probably come and help out. So he did. And I didn't realise how embarrassing my dad was until he started coaching. And then he started refereeing games. And when you have to catch yourself saying sir instead of dad, that's not a penalty. And the other opposition are looking at it going, he's your dad. How embarrassing. So, no, it was... I was lucky that I got some good genes from him. He was very unfortunate not to get more than 2 games for Ireland.
Got another question here. Yes, sir.
Message for Ben. Ben, if you weren't ginger, what colour would you like to be?
Well, you do know that gingers only can call gingers gingers, so you've stepped across a line there that I feel fairly uncomfortable about. But and whilst I refer to myself sometimes as autumn sunset, I am secretly really happy that I'm a ginger. I sort of, yeah, there's not many of us around. We're a dying breed.
Well, you're growing extra hair. You're growing more ginger around the chin area, so you must be delighted with it.
Yeah,
Most keep it super tight shaved twice a day, but not you.
No, you either embrace it or you stay indoors. I tried the laugh. Doesn't help your career, really, if you just stay in your room and cry.
Let's get some more questions from the floor. Who's got a question? Got a question over there? Any more questions on this side? If you've got a question, just raise your hand and we will get the microphone over to you. Yes, sir.
Hi, good morning, guys. What have Saracens done so well to rise or to be in the ascendancy at the moment in European rugby?
From my view, and lucky enough to have seen them train and see their environment and know their coaches, they do a little bit what I talked about. They empower the players. Players love playing for Saracens. Their coaches give them all sorts of opportunities to do their thing, and they have a really good, feel-good environment. So you walk into the clubhouse at Saracens training base, and they'll all come up to you. They'll welcome you. It's a very friendly atmosphere, and you watch their training. It's all positive. They don't have any of this banter. It's all positive with each other, and I think they're probably the team that do that better than anybody else. Exeter slightly just a little bit behind them. So from what I see, that's what they've been doing for the last few years, and Mark McCall's been leading the charge with that and has done a terrific job.
Yeah, I think Mark McCall's humility speaks volumes for Saracens. Behind the scenes, he doesn't want to be front and centre. He wants his players to be making headlines. He'll do the necessary media work after games, but he's very unassuming. I think that typifies the culture that exists there, that no one gets above their station. You see how all the English internationals always go back and relish the prospect of playing for their club again. I think some international players see club rugby as a bit of a chore. It's a necessary evil to go and play in the England jersey, whereas not the case with Saracens at all. I think they play some of their best rugby in their club jersey. They do have every need catered for. They have their own creche there, so the boys bring their kids in, drop them off to a singly licensed creche just for them, and then after training bring the kids home. So it's those small things, make sure that there's no excuses for you on the pitch. When all the things are catered for, it's kind of the Clive Woodward way of thinking. You're not allowed to have any excuses off it because I'm going to look after everything, so make sure you perform on the field.
Got a question at the back here, and then we'll move over to the other side. Yes, sir.
Thanks. Ben, this is primarily for you, but being close to Pacific Island Rugby, what do you think the guys down there need to do to secure their future and growth?
Oh, it's more than a couple of sentences, but effectively there's a few things that we need to do. You need a professional club on the islands, because all the boys have to leave if they want to play professional rugby. So a Super Rugby franchise on the islands would go a long way to solving a lot of the problems. And then you can't blame World Rugby for everything. It's easy to, but they do a ton of great stuff in the islands. And actually, you look internally at the Fiji Rugby Union, Samoa Rugby Union, and being part of that system for a long time, they've got a lot of work to do internally around a lot of things they do, and whether it's mismanagement of funds, misappropriation, or just poor governance. So that's a pretty boring answer. Thank you.
I'm not best equipped to add anything more boring than that, so we'll just leave it there, will we?
You were talking about that governance of the Tongan Rugby Union. You were talking about the governance.
Well, I did my thesis on that, listen, there's no doubt that behind the scenes, and Ben's better equipped to know that, but there's lots of messing going on, and there's so much politics to sport and funding and everything. And until you get that fixed, the players can't do a proper job on the pitch.
Going to get another quick question here. Yes, sir.
Hi guys, what are your thoughts on the Six Nations coming up after we've had most of the friendly internationals? I know Wales are playing today, but just like your thoughts.
Yeah, I think we're in for an exciting Six Nations. Obviously the Northern Hemisphere teams had a really good showing this November. I think maybe with the exception of Wales, who haven't been at their best, but they rarely do in November, and they always turn it on for Six Nations. So it's exciting seeing the emergence of Scotland again. into a real threat for everyone. I think they get England in Murrayfield as well pretty early on, which will be an absolute belter of a game. They'll be a very difficult beat in Murrayfield now with the confidence that they have and the coaching ticket under Gregor Townsend and the strength and depth that they're developing. So very exciting from that prospect. England did an awful lot of fiddling with their combinations in November, so I don't think you can read a huge amount there, but they have some way to go in their attack game to be the finished article. And then Ireland, I think, are in good shape. I think we've got a great defence and probably a better attack than England right now, but that doesn't count for anything when you go to Twickenham. So France are the disappointment. Italy emerging. It's going to be a very competitive Six Nations and hard one to call, but England, Ireland for me.
Got another question here.
Hi, Ben and Brian. If your team isn't doing so well and it's the half-time, what do you say to them to try and motivate and lift them up again?
We had this question yesterday, actually, and there's no one straight answer. You've got to be consistent as a coach. So, you know, if you fly off the handle all the time, then after a while it's white noise to your players, and you have to have the impact at the right time. A little bit like a teacher swearing once a term, you know, you got to hold those words back at the appropriate time. It's about process for teams, and in Sevens game, it flips so quickly that you just stick to your processes. There's 2 or 3 things that you might want to pick up with. You might have a couple of chats with individuals. I'm on the side of the field looking at the flow of the team. So let's have if I was coaching Fiji before the semi-final against South Africa, at the moment they're attacking pretty well, a little bit individually, but as a defence they're not connecting. So that would be my priority at the start of the game. And then I'd make sure at half-time we referred back to that and talked about what was going well and what wasn't. So, you know, things can twist and turn so quickly that you've got to be consistent as a coach. And I never liked as a player, you know, a coach that would be shouting all the time at me. I got it enough at home.
Yeah, you know, for anyone that was here yesterday, you have to forgive me repeating this story. I suppose talking about solving the process. First of all, at half-time, you've got to know where the issue lies. And once you identify that, you're able to fix it. If you're not sure where the problem lies, you're going to come across the same issues for the next 40 minutes. We had a huge moment years ago in a Heineken Cup final where Leinster were playing Northampton. We're 16 points down at half-time. And what was happening was we were knocking on an awful lot of ball, making a lot of unforced errors. So it would be we'd be scrummaged. They were annihilating us in the scrum. Penalty, 50 metres down the pitch. Complete territory game by Northampton. They dominated us. So at half-time, our scrum coach took the 3 front rowers in, showed them video analysis from the first half. This is what you need to change. We said, listen, let's stop dropping balls. That onus is on the players. So we looked after the ball a bit more. And then when we did get to scrum, we actually got the ascendancy. They changed that from the technical point of view of what they saw at half-time. And then it was a complete role reversal. We were the one getting the penalties, we were the ones getting the territory, and we won the game by 10 points. So it's just about identifying where you can improve, and it's more often than not, it's small improvements, small little things, individual but collective as well, and that's the difference between, you know, winning and losing in tight games.
And it's the same after games sometimes. You know, you don't want to fly off the handle, you've got to be fairly measured, sometimes give an opportunity for the players to take it all in. I remember once as a player, I'd worked really hard on the field, tons of effort. I was tired in the change room afterwards, and my dad had come in and he said to me, you know, son, maybe it's time for you to call it a day. And at the age of 12 and a half, I thought that was quite harsh.
We had a question down here. The lovely lady here wanted to ask a question of you, Brian. A simple question. Why are Ireland not a force to be reckoned with in the Seven Series?
Well, it's simply down to funding. We took a 15-year sabbatical. We had a Sevens team when I started in '99, and then the funding was stopped, and you know, they felt the need to put it back into the 15s game and focus on that. Now, David Nucifora, who oversees the Irish Rugby Football Union, 4 years ago said, right, we need a sevens team again. We need an opportunity to be able to plug some of the younger players that don't get game time with their clubs into the series, work on their fitness, work on their skill set, work on the opportunity to play in big arenas in front of big crowds. So it's a work on. I think we're a while away yet from being out there on centre stage, but you know, another 3, 4, 5 years, I think you'll see more of a focus being given to our sevens. There's a big focus given to our women's sevens. The funding is actually in reverse. They're getting it all versus the women's 15. So there's a bit of annoyance about that. But the sevens, the women's sevens had a really great performance yesterday. Won a final, the bowl final against South Africa, played very well. So yeah, you know, they're the ones to watch on the seventh circuit.
Last chance to ask a question before we move on to signings. Any final questions from the crowd? Any final questions from Facebook Live? None as yet. We have a question up there or not? We do?
Dad? What time what? Is it Fibbers tonight? All right.
1:30. Just a quick one before we wrap up. Do we have any Australians with us? One Australian, okay. Do we have any Kiwis with us? One Kiwi, okay. Do we know the South Africans with us? Okay. British and Irish Lions, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. From a tourist point of view, if you had the choice of going on tour to one of those, which one would you recommend?
You're going to disappoint. Yeah. Were there most South Africans here? Now, I have to say, I was lucky to tour in all three countries, and for me, I thought the best tour was down in Australia. Sorry, guys. You know, what I would say different to that is, from a touring perspective, as a team, South Africa is probably best simply because of the time difference. So down in New Zealand and Australia, you play your games late at night. So, you know, the dirt trackers or the players that aren't involved in the game come and watch the game, but then you don't have an opportunity to hang out after the game. It might be 10:30, 11 o'clock. They're gone home to bed to get ready for training the next day, whereas the games in South Africa kick off at 3:30, 4 o'clock. You all get back to the hotel for 6:30, 7 o'clock, have a couple of beers, have a cup of coffee, hang out together. So it actually gives you an opportunity to grow as a team an awful lot more. Not much is said about that, but it does lend itself to better team camaraderie. And I had a great time in South Africa, albeit we lost the series.
At least I didn't have the most boring answer.
We got time to squeeze one more in.
Just a question for Ben. Who was the greatest sevens player you ever coached and why?
Well, good question. Look, as far as a leader, someone that's actually passed out on my shoulder after games and has won the most things for Fiji, it would have to be Ratu Osea Kolinasau, the captain of the gold medal winning side. I've seen some amazing talent on the islands, and I've coached some amazing English talent and British talent as well. But Oscar, yeah, you want him by your side when times are tough. He's a Fijian that can do all the Fijian stuff, but then he also has this ability that when the going gets tough, he's unmatched, unrivaled.
Why didn't he properly ever make it in the 15-man game? What is it? So he's such a standout performer at sevens. Why? You would have thought that someone that was that good and that impressive and that much of a leader would find a position in the 15-man game.
Yeah, I just kept hold of him in the sevens. I didn't want him to go.
Okay.
So he went to France for a little bit, and then he didn't enjoy it over there, and again with a lot of the Fijian boys, it's not an easy transition sometimes to go overseas. He missed the village, he missed the local life. He wanted to go back to the islands. He's gone to Houston now to play rugby. He didn't really want to. He wanted to stay and play for these guys, but things didn't quite work out, and he's over there. And I hope he'll be a future sevens coach for Fiji. But
listen, you've been a great audience. We're back here around about 3 o'clock or so. These boys are very kindly going to stick around to do some signing. To Facebook Live, thank you very much indeed to the Facebook crew up there. Reese's on the wheels of steel throughout the afternoon. But let's put your hands together one final time for Ben Ryan and Brian O'Driscoll. If you would like anything signed, head on down here to the left of the stage down here, where we will be signing some bits and pieces for you over the next 15 minutes or so. So come on and join us. Do enjoy the rest of the afternoon on the bank. A big thanks to all of you for being with us here in the Premier Suite. Enjoy the Sevens.